Next on Rugby Wrap-Up, your global rugby wrap-up with Steve Lewis, Alex Corbisiero, Bryan Ray, and Matt McCarthy. Rugby Wrap-Up brought to you in part by The Pig and Whistle, the world's best rugby pub. The Murphy Kennedy Group, founded with the idea that construction can be done better. And Lean and Limber, stretching your way to a healthier lifestyle. Hey everybody, welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up. Matt McCarthy in Midtown Manhattan, and I am joined by an all-star cast. Mr. Alex Corbisiero, I believe he's in Los Angeles. Mr. Bryan Ray up in Halifax, that's Nova Scotia. That's part of Canada. It's a place north of the United States. And Mr. Stephen Lewis in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Gentlemen, welcome. We don't have time for pleasantries, so let's get right to it. Alex, why don't you get us going? What caught your eye on the global landscape?
I think it's got to be England's decline in the Six Nations, or perceived decline and pressure on Eddie Jones. And I think that's a fascinating story. I saw an article today saying that he has a potential release clause in his contract. I think, you know, when you look at a guy who took England to the World Cup final, who then won the Six Nations, who then won the Autumn Nations Cup, and then they go and have a dodgy Six Nations, which I think some of the cracks were in those previous wins and previous winning campaigns before, and people were getting frustrated. But this sort of driving England off a bit of a cliff in this Six Nations of their up and downness and losing, I think it's their worst finish in I don't know how long, but in a long, long time.
Steve, any comments to follow that up?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the German word, Schadenfreude. Okay. That's taking pleasure in other people's problems. So I'm delighted to wallow in it this week. So first off, congrats to England winning the Triple Crown. Okay, losing 3 games. Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, they're Celtic cousins. It's terrific. And as Corbs says, I don't see it as a perceived decline. I see it as the decline. When you finish 5th out of 6, that's a decline. We all know they're a better team. We all know they've got the players. So is it? They are.
I agree. I think that is why. And I think it comes to the criticism of Eddie, I think, wants to have a squad at the next World Cup with 70, 80, 100 caps. And so he's kind of already picked his team for this 4-year cycle. But the problem is some of those teams the heart of them are in Saracens, who aren't playing week in, week out rugby. And then there's a lot of guys who are putting their hands up in the club scene for their teams week in, week out, who aren't getting a sniff in the team at all. And I think that's growing on the frustration. And his sort of personality of, I know what's best, I do what I want, works when England are winning, but it can almost be his downfall as England and results start to turn. And I agree, there's a dip in form, a dip in consistency, a loss in like physicality and set piece dominance. So I think England have built a lot of these wins on, and that gave them the flexibility to play a kick heavy style or a game line style, where right now I feel like they haven't got all those little nuts and bolts and details to their game to the same level of consistency that they've had previously.
When you talk about the physicality of the front rowers, are you talking about Genge elbowing Sexton into a coma pretty much, or attempting to at least?
I just saw that on Twitter today. I didn't actually catch it on the weekend, and that's pretty brutal.
He doesn't think he's on camera?
Honestly, I'd be curious what the sanctions do. I think that's a loss of control, and I think that's part of what happened in England. They got ruffled, their feathers ruffled up front. I think Ireland's set pieces improved dramatically with Paul O'Connell coming in, with the adoption of Saracen's scrummaging technique as well. That unfolded England in the front row too. I think there's like multiple facets, but the fact that they were able to combat England at the set piece and actually contain them in the contact area was a fuel for the fire for the Irish on that day. And it definitely ruffled the feather of England, who aren't used to that being the case, especially in 4 wins in a row against the Irish, to finally come unstuck in such miraculous fashion.
Yeah, back to Genge, not even cited. World Rugby's disciplinary system is a farce. Plead guilty and you're rewarded, right? Look at Ferguson. It's a nonsense right now. How Genge doesn't get cited for that, it's an embarrassment.
Speaking of ruffled feathers, let's go to the Toronto Arrows fan who's got a broken quill in his pocket right now. Bryan, what do you got?
I'm over the Six Nations, so a couple of things caught my eye this past weekend. I'm going to start Premier 15s. That's the women's competition over in England. 11 North American internationals playing Saracens versus Exeter Chiefs. Awesome to see. Good game. Canadian getting player of the match as well, Sophie de Goody. So that was awesome. And Superliga Americana de Rugby down in South America is underway. We're in 2 rounds now. They're playing a few days apart because they're in this bubble, so it's not like 1 game a week in MLR right now. They play a couple games about 5 days apart, and then they move on to the next venue kind of thing. But so far, it's looking pretty competitive. Haguari is a little bit strong in the 1 game they played, but it's a good level of rugby at the moment, and good to see them actually getting it underway after that false start last season.
Kidding around last week, I brought up the potential of the rugby wrap-up version of the European Champions Cup for the 2 MLR-ish leagues in the United States and down south. How soon do you think before we can actually get something like that?
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet. Let's let them get another year, maybe another season in after this, and then maybe 2023. I know there's been talks about it. There were even talks about it last year, possible champion versus champion thing. I would like to, maybe after the 2023 World Cup, once we've got both competitions settled in, it would be really cool to see.
All right. Johnny Lewis is our crazy Welsh editor, and he insists that I talk about this. The Welsh scoring like All Blacks all of a sudden and getting away from Warren Ball. Steve?
Yeah.
You're not sold.
Oh, they're playing better rugby, no question about it. But, I mean, does he get credit because they had a miserable 2020 and then it's all come good? They won a couple of games in squeakers. They've had a man advantage in 3 games. It's great to see Wales playing better. They're one of the great rugby nations. I'm sorry, they're not a Grand Slam team for me.
I also agree that Wales had a fair bit of luck in the competition to get to the Grand Slam game in their favor, but I would give them a lot of credit from where they were in the autumn, where they were last year to this year. They've dramatically improved. I think that there's a clearer identity in the way they attack by, the tries on the edge that they're finally scoring. I think finding North and Davis as a centership partnership is fantastic. And I think he's also boosted by the fact he had his best players to pick from. That squad is fantastic. They upped their physicality massively, which is the only way they're able to be competitive against England, France, Ireland, and teams like that. And then, I think they've improved with every game. And I thought they really did turn it on against Wales. They were a minute or so away from being Grand Slam winners. Yes, I agree with the asterisk next to the other 4 games. But if they had finished that game in France in the way they had, in my mind, they deserved it, because France are an incredible team, and they really, for 65, 70 minutes of that game, took it to them and put them under pressure.
Brian, any thoughts other than Toronto losing?
Yeah, that's it.
Stephen, go ahead.
That's okay.
No, Steve, go ahead.
Greenock Wanderers 16 and Strother 15. That's all I'm saying.
Google it, ladies and gentlemen. On that note, don't go too far, because this crew is sticking together for our Major League Rugby show this week, so don't go away. And please check out our other segments, including our Major League Rugby show, our Global Rugby Recap, What Are the Odds?, our Major League Rugby Sports Bet show with the Philly Godfather, John Bradshaw Layfield, the WWE legend, and Gift Egbelu, martial law, the Zack Attack. And please sign up for our American Red Cross Rugby Wrap-Up Blood Donor Team.